everyone, my name is Allie and welcome to my channel. So it is finally time for me to talk about season 3 part 2 of Bridgerton, and I feel like I have so much to talk about this time. When I filmed my part 1 of this video, I definitely had a lot to talk about, but I also kind of felt a little held back because like we didn't have the entire context of the season yet, so I felt like I couldn't really make too many like actual statements about how I felt about the first part of the season. Now that we have part 2 and we have all of that context and everything is kind of wrapped up, I feel like I have so many more things to talk about. I did take some notes, however, I kind of got so sucked in to this section of the season where I was able to take really thorough notes during episode 5, but after that it just stopped happening. I got way too sucked in, I started having way too many thoughts, and I literally could not write anything past that. But I literally wrote an insane amount of notes for episode 5 that I have not revisited since, so I don't even know where to start with this discussion about part 2. Also, a disclaimer, I feel like I should say this one more time. Thankfully everybody on the last video was super positive, super nice, but I do know that this season in particular and this show really brings out a lot of really divisive opinions and divisive feelings from people, so like let's keep it nice, let's keep it friendly. That would be great. If I liked something that you didn't like, that's okay. If I didn't like something that you did like, that's also okay. This is really just a space for us to talk about season 3, and if you did enjoy season 3, that is totally fine and you are valid in that opinion. However, I will say, spoiler alert, I did overall really enjoy season 3. I think that Bridgerton as a show does have a lot of issues when it comes to production, narrative, editing, etc. But I try to meet these kind of shows where they're at. This is for fun. This is a fun historical romance, fantasy-esque kind of show. It is silly, it is lighthearted, it is a romance, and I am not going to sit here and complain about a show being something that it never was going to be. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I know that some people can come into this show with really strange expectations, especially with this season, and I will talk about that, but that's not me. I'm not that type of person. I try to manage my expectations as much as possible. Anyway, we start off this part 2 of season 3, and it's really basically just picking up where we left off. And where we left off is them getting out of the carriage and Colin being like, are you gonna marry me? Let's go inside, let's tell everybody. And Penelope's like, whoa, okay, this is happening really fast. And so they go in and tell everybody, hey, this is great news, we are engaged. And Penelope is just kind of like moving through this scene very slowly and very much like everything is happening around her, everything is happening to her, and she is just taking it all in as much as she possibly can. Like, I could just imagine, especially in this like friends to lovers sort of plot line, when you have been friends with somebody for years, for so long, and you finally kind of come together and are on the same page romantically and like feelings wise, it is such like a mind fuck. It really, really is. Like, your mind is truly blown. Like, everything is moving so fast but also so slow, and I love the way that they kind of represented that in the show. I know some people were kind of like making fun of it and like it is a little silly, but it is also so accurate. As somebody who is a longtime subscriber to the Friends to Lovers in real life trope, it is very, very accurate to how it just feels to kind of like experience that, which I like. And I think that's why I love the season in general. It's just like, I personally in my real life, huge fan of Friends and Lovers, just historically. And so I just feel like I can really relate to the season, and I'm like, I get it. I see you, you see me, we get each other. And here we get like the huge like Eloise Penelope fight, which I just absolutely loved. And I thought was so deeply funny, but also so representative of like how much they care about each other and how much like Penelope still matters to Eloise, because like the most passionate feelings that come out of Eloise during this season are about Penelope and Colin, and like you just really get to see how much these three people are like intertwined together in this sort of like triad of friendship, which is something I really love about this season, is the fact that like you really do get to see how much these three characters mean to each other, like how much Colin means to Eloise, or Penelope means to Eloise, or you know, vice versa, all around. Like everybody has these emotions for each other. You really get to see that here with Penelope and Eloise being like getting into this fight after the announcement of the engagement, of like, you are living a lie, from Eloise to Penelope. You are living a lie. You have not told him this, and you need to, or else this relationship is never going to work between you two. Like, I know you both well enough that you need to come clean. Like, if you want this to work, you have to tell him. And I've had some like mixed feelings about the way that Eloise goes about this, but ultimately I think that it makes sense for their characters and for the narrative that they're trying to go with, is that like Eloise is like battling a lot of different emotions within herself. Like, this is a friend that she so deeply cares about, and also her brother, who is probably like kind of one of her favorite siblings. I don't know how to say this without it sounding bad, but it just makes sense, especially if you're part of a, like, if you're really, really close to your siblings, like you can kind of be a bitch to them and know that they're not going to stay mad at you, and they're not going to actually like really be mad at you because you have such a close relationship. So you feel like you can kind of like have a semi like playfully antagonistic relationship with them, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's kind of what happens between Eloise and Colin, and you kind of get to see that earlier in the season where Colin gets mad at Eloise for something that she's done, and I guess if you've seen this you already know what happened, but like he kind of gets mad at her for confiding in Cressida something that is kind of private, which is the fact that Colin is helping Penelope find a husband, and he gets mad at her for that and pretty quickly moves on from being angry at her and is like, no, we're fine, like we're fine. When she asks like, hey, are we okay, or like we still like fine, and he's like, yeah, no big deal. And I think that that is really indicative of their kind of sibling relationship, which I love. And so you kind of have this triad of friends being like, there's a lot of secrets going on here, and Eloise knows these two characters so well that like she's like, this needs to happen. And I think the thing that really just kind of like made me feel iffy about it, I personally do not love ultimatums. That's just like me personally. But I understand it from like this like narrative perspective, this character perspective of like, Eloise needs this to happen, and like also the plot kind of needs it to happen. Also something that happens in episode 5, I don't want to spend too much time on episode 5, only because I'm like, this is gonna take forever if I try to go through like my entire notes, but also this is the only episode I took notes on. But I love this quote that Colin says to his brothers when they're all kind of like debriefing after the engagement announcement, when Colin says, my feelings for Penelope are not a thunderbolt from the sky. Like, I just loved that, because I feel like too often, especially within the Bridgerton fandom, and especially with people who do not like Colin, they sometimes incorrectly assume that like Colin's feelings for Penelope just out of the blue happened, and that he never really felt any of those romantic feelings for her before his revelation, which is just not true, especially if you go back and watch season 1 and season 2. Like, it is so obvious from the jump that he has had these feelings. He just hasn't been able to properly identify them, which is, I get it, I understand, especially like in the friends to lovers situation. These kind of things happen where it's like you're friends with someone for quite a while and you may be experiencing these feelings and you have no idea that it's happening. And then suddenly one day you're just like walking along, minding your own business, going about your life, and then it just hits you like, wait, do I love this person? Like, do I romantically love this person? Like, this is strange. Like, this is just not happening. And then you start to like think back and you're like, wait, this has been brewing for much longer than I thought it was. And that's kind of what happens here. And I think that people who have just like never experienced that kind of romantic experience or like relationship or whatever, they cannot fathom how that would happen. And so seeing that like Penelope has held a candle for him for so long and she's known about her feelings for so long, but Colin is just recognizing his feelings, that I think to them feels a little bit unbalanced and a little bit weird. But to me, I'm like, I have been in Colin's shoes before. I've also been in Penelope's shoes before. It's happened. It does kind of like hit you, but it's not random. And that's why I love that he says that it's not a thunderbolt from the sky. Like, yes, it seems to be a little random and it seems to be a little intense, but it's not out of nowhere. Like, this did not happen out of nowhere. And I love that he makes that known. Also, episode 5 is where their first like true sex scene happens, and I personally absolutely loved how like real and raw it felt. Like, it was so dissimilar to like other sex scenes in Bridgerton. I think that they all kind of approach these more like intimate scenes differently each season, and which makes sense, you know, based on the characters and the plot and whatever. But I absolutely loved the realism that happened in this season. I thought it was really beautiful, and I also love that it happens in like their semi-unfurnished new house, like new home, and I think that that's really beautiful. And I don't know, I just really loved this scene. I thought it worked really well. I love the chemistry that these two characters have together. I love the way that they approached the scene. I love Penelope's reaction to so much of it. And I even said this in my notes. I'm like, Penelope literally cannot fathom that this is happening to her. She like almost wants to laugh, but she's like, wait, keep it together. And I get it. I feel that. I see that. And I do love that at the end that like they have that like laugh, that they share that laugh together as a couple and as friends and as lovers. And I think that that's so beautiful. I'm so pro like the people that you can laugh with in these intimate situations are the people that you like need to keep close to you. And I think that that's so beautiful that they show this in this show. I just think it's adorable. And I also talk about this in my notes, is that I love that the theme of this season is like honesty, the best policy. Like, everybody needs to be honest, and a lot of characters in this season are struggling with that. And they, throughout the course of the season, and especially in part 2, they really come face to face with the things that they have either been lying about, have been keeping a secret, have not really had the courage to like recognize within themselves. And I think that that's really interesting. Like, you have Penelope, who has been keeping the secret of Lady Whistledown, has been going behind everybody's back, has been saying a lot of things about the Ton, most, I would probably say like 95% of which are true, but it still feels a little bit like a lie because she has not been honest about the fact that she's Lady Whistledown. She has had to lie to a lot of people, especially Colin, and you really see her having to come clean, basically getting caught being Lady Whistledown. I believe that's in episode 6. I cannot remember. I wish that I had taken notes for every episode. I didn't though. And having to face the reality and the consequences of what it means to be Lady Whistledown, especially in the eyes of the people who care about her the most. And then you have Colin, who is kind of like not necessarily been living a lie, but especially in the first part of this season, he comes in and is kind of someone like unrecognizable. Like, he is not himself, and he's really trying to portray the idea that he is like a man of the town, like he is normal, he is just like every other man in the town, he is having fun and whatever. And he kind of has to, through the course of the season, come back to himself and realize that people love him because of who he is, and that Penelope loves him because of who he is and not because of the man he's trying to portray himself as. And then you have Eloise, who has also kind of been living this lie this season of being like, very similarly to Colin, of I'm gonna be friends with Cressida, I'm gonna try to immerse myself into friendships with these ladies who, you know, I've never really gotten along with, etc. Like, she is really trying to create this image for herself the way that Colin is also. And they both kind of have to come to terms with the fact that, like, that's not them. And then you have Benedict, who is struggling with his identity and struggling with the idea that he has to be honest with himself and honest with the people around him that he's in like these intimate relationships with, and being like, this is what I want, and kind of realizing that he is different, and that I think that it's kind of canon. I believe that maybe Luke Thompson has talked about this, that Benedict is pansexual, and so he kind of has to come to terms with that. Like, there's a lot of like characters this season coming to terms with their identities, whether it's being Lady Whistledown, being non-straight, being your own self, like that kind of thing. Like, being true to your identity, being true to yourself, being honest is the major theme within this particular season. I think that each season kind of deals with that sort of like honesty differently, because like even in season 1 you do have that theme of being honest about like Simon. He carries a lot of secrets that he keeps from Daphne. In season 2 you have the secrets between Anthony and Kate, and them kind of like not wanting to recognize the feelings that they have for each other, really fighting against that and not being honest with not only each other but also with Edwina and the rest of their families. And so it's really interesting to see the ways in which honesty is treated in each season, and what these characters need to do and go through in order to be their most authentic selves. Okay, I need a little coffee break. Give me a second. I feel like I've been talking a lot. I mean, I could honestly talk about this season of Bridgerton. I mean, every season of Bridgerton, but this season in particular, I could talk about 4 hours and it would just go on and on. I think we should talk a little bit more about Lady Whistledown, because I feel like I want to talk about that, but like, I did just see a tweet recently that I retweeted, and hopefully I can include it in this part of the video. But basically it was like, the way that Colin finds out that Penelope is Lady Whistledown is really interesting, because this is the first time that somebody has actually cared enough about Penelope to find out where she's going. You know what I mean? Like, find out what she's doing and why she's sneaking around, which I think is really intriguing, because as we've seen in other seasons, and even Penelope's mom kind of admits this as well, is that like nobody's really paying attention to Penelope. And we see this a lot, like nobody's paying attention to Penelope, nobody's paying attention to Colin and Penelope. And so she kind of gets to lay low and go under the radar and be Lady Whistledown without too much trouble. Because nobody is really being like, hey, Penelope, where are you going? Like, where do you go when you're leaving the ball early, or, you know, whatever? And nobody brings it up. Nobody mentions it. Nobody's like, this is weird and suspicious and strange. I think Eloise kind of admits it in the end of season 2, when she finds out that Penelope's Lady Whistledown, but this is always like after the fact. Colin actually follows her out of, oh God, what party is this? Is it the Mondrich ball? I cannot remember. This is why I wish I had taken notes. I should have taken notes. But he follows her from the party and is like, I was concerned that you were being like taken on a ride by your carriage, like that they were kidnapping you. And so I was concerned. And it was weird that you had sneaked away with Eloise and had this little like secret meeting, and that was strange, and I was concerned. And I love that like they both exhibit the care that they have for each other in ways that like other people are not doing for them. And I love that. I just think that that's really beautiful, that they both care so much about each other. And they're both really filling these holes for each other of like, nobody has ever really like paid a lot of attention to either of them, because they are pretty self-sufficient people and are also pretty like introverted in a way, and kind of like are usually like off doing their own things. And so nobody has to really like care about them or worry about them in any way. And I think that that's also how they've gotten away with being so outlandish these past 3 seasons, because like even in like season 1, like they're dancing together, they're having these like very like private conversations, and nobody bats an eye. Nobody thinks twice about it. Nobody even like has like a, ooh, what are they doing? Like, that's weird. Like, that's strange. Like, why are these 2 unmarried people having these like very intimate conversations with each other and dancing so much with each other? That's weird. With anybody else, it would be weird. But because it's Colin and Penelope and they have been such great friends and they call each other by their first names, suddenly it's not weird. Suddenly nobody is curious. Nobody has a problem with it. But if it was literally anybody else, it'd be like, you 2 need to get married, like, immediately. And I personally love that. I think that that's really adorable, and I love that they have gotten away with calling each other Colin and Pen for so long, and nobody says anything. I do kind of want to talk about some of the things I did not like about this season, which I feel like, you know, this season was so weird compared to other seasons, and it's really hard to draw any sort of comparisons between this one and season 1 and season 2 because of the fact that this season was split into 2 parts. So when this was first announced, I was like, no, absolutely not. This is the worst decision they could ever make. This is horrible. Why are they doing this to Pollen? Like, why are they doing this? It doesn't make sense. I wish that they had either just stuck with like a full, all 8 episodes just at one time, or if they had done like an episode a week. Either of those I would have been perfectly fine with. I didn't totally end up hating the split into 2 parts idea. I did like the fact that we kind of got an entire month to be like, what is part 2 gonna be like? Theorizing and having fun and having all of this press and promo. That was like the good part. The bad part is that I feel like even when you watch the season from episode 1 to episode 8 all the way through, it still feels a little disjointed. And I'm not sure if it's because of the structure of the way that they did the plot, or if it's because, I don't really know. Like, I can't tell you exactly why it feels so disjointed, but it just does. And for me, it's like so much of part 1 gets wrapped up after episode 4. And by the time we get to episode 5, it feels like a lot of the plot lines that were started in part 1 don't really get mentioned in part 2, besides in like fleeting random moments. So like there's 2 things that I really like that instantly come to mind when I think about this, and it's like, the first one is Lord Devling. Where the fuck does he go? What happened to him? Wasn't he trying to get a wife? Like, regardless of the fact that like Penelope wasn't gonna be with him. That's fine. But doesn't he still need a wife? Like, is that not a thing that he still needs? Did his time run out? Like, did he, like, we never really get that sort of like resolution to his character and his plot line. It's very strange. And then, and like, he just never gets brought up again. I think he does get brought up once by Penelope's mom, but other than that, never seen him again. Never seen him again. And it's just weird. It's strange, and it makes the season feel disjointed, that we hear nothing about him after this point. And then the other thing that I had an issue with like, in terms of the part 1, part 2, is a very small issue, but I think that it's valid. At least in my mind it's valid. But it's the fact that like, Cressida kind of makes it seem, at least in part 1, and especially in that 4th episode, that she kind of knows that Colin and Penelope are having a little bit of a thing that other people are not seeing. She references Eros and Psyche and kind of just makes it seem like, duh, isn't it obvious? Isn't it obvious that they clearly have feelings for each other? That there's something going on? And then in part 2, when she finds out that Colin and Penelope are engaged, seems like a little like kind of surprised by it, but also kind of like doesn't really ever seem like she's like, duh. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't seem to have that same sort of reaction as she does in episode 4, where she's like, they're Eros and Psyche. Like, duh. Like, yeah, we've been new. But in episode 5 probably, when this happens, I'm like, didn't you just seem like you knew that this was gonna happen, or like that you knew that they had feelings for each other? This has no effect on her at all. Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. And she makes no mention of doubling after that. Like, she literally does not mention him at all. Never. Not even once. So I'm like, what happened? I feel like we're missing a chapter. We're missing some sort of like resolution to the whole Lord Devling thing, because she was also trying to get with him. She was also putting her hat into the ring, and it made it seem, at least in part 1, that like, if he didn't make it work with Penelope, he could have Cressida. You know what I mean? Like, it seemed weird. It seemed disjointed, and I guess those two things are kind of related, because it's just like, where's Lord Devling? Where did he go? He's missing. Not that I cared all that much about him, because honestly, not my fave. I mean, he's a perfectly probably nice guy. I just don't care about him. But like, I do kind of care about him now that like he's not around. I'm like, where the fuck did he go? So yeah, like, it's just like so much disjointedness between part 1 and part 2. They feel like 2 separate seasons. You know what I mean? They really just don't seem like they flow together. And I don't really know how else to put that into words. Like, I don't know exactly like how to fix that issue because like some of it makes sense and then other parts don't. And I think it might be tonally they're just very different. Like, the first part tonally feels a bit more lighthearted, and then the tone in part 2 feels a little bit more serious. And I think that that just kind of throws me off a little bit of like, I guess just like the tone progression feels a little bit jarring to me personally. I think another thing that I take a little bit of issue with, but this is an issue that I have across the board when it comes to Bridgerton, is that the editing is so fucked up. I'm just gonna say it. From season 1 until now, the editing, weird. I don't like it. I feel like we spend too much time on certain plots that don't really matter, and then we don't spend enough time on plots that do, and we don't ever really get to sit in our feelings in this show. We are constantly moving from scene to scene at an insane pace, and I think that this is an issue not just with like the editing. Like, I actually don't even think the editing is really the issue. I think what the real issue is that they're trying to fit so much content into 8 episodes that are like just about an hour long. And like that seems like it'd be a lot of room to like do things. Like 8 hours, yeah, that seems like a lot. That's like what, 3 movies? Maybe 4 movies, I guess, if it's like a 2-hour long movie. So yeah, like 4 movies. So it seems like that should be a long time, but the way that there are so many plot lines in Bridgerton and there's so much going on, it almost feels like you need at least 12 episodes. At least 12 episodes. And just cramming everything into 8 episodes means that the editing really has to go quickly. Like, we do not get to sit in a scene for very long, and we don't get a lot of interaction, or at least like deep interaction from all of these characters, because there's literally so many characters. You have Violet, Lady Danbury, Queen Charlotte, you have Anthony, Benedict, Colin. Daphne's not here, so I guess you can kind of toss her out. Eloise, you actually finally now have Francesca, so like, there we go. Hyacinth, Gregory, Penelope, you have her 2 sisters, you have her mom, you have like literally Cressida, her parents. You have so many freaking characters, countless characters that do matter to the plot, and that like, I don't think that they don't need to be there. I want them to be there. But the problem is that like, with so many characters, so many interwoven plot lines, it feels rushed. Every season feels rushed. Like, I feel like you never really get to deep dive into any of these characters or any of their relationships. And I wish that they would expand the episodes. Even if you can't do 12, at least do 10. At least do 10. You know, like, it's just like, we cannot survive on 8 episodes. And this isn't me being like, I really want more of my ship, because it's not that. Like, of course I want more Colin, of course I want more Anthony. So, you know, Daphne and Simon I can kind of live without. Like, that's really not an issue for me. But like, I do like a lot of these side plots. I do want to explore the other characters more, especially as they come into more and more prominence throughout the seasons. Like, obviously we're going to get to a Benedict season or an Eloise season, and I want to see more of them. But you can't do it with only 8 episodes. However, I'm going to kind of going to rebuttal that a little bit, because I'm of 2 minds. I'm of 2 minds here, and I have 2 issues. Because yes, we only get like 8 episodes, and the editing is kind of atrocious. But also, the way that they treat specifically Benedict, and even a little bit Eloise, and a lot of the other like side characters, there's an issue with the writing. There's an issue with the writing, specifically of these 2 characters and some of the other side characters, but like mostly Benedict and Eloise. They are so deeply underdeveloped, yet the narrative and the way that they present these characters makes it seem like they want you to believe that they're developed characters. You know what I mean? Like, they're operating on the idea that these are complicated, complex, developed characters, when they have put no work into doing that. And this has been an issue from season to season, and I think that we had a really interesting progression of Eloise's character. As much as I did not like her plotline in season 2, at least we were going somewhere. And I think that even in season 3, I mean, she's not the worst victim of this, like, obviously. I think that Eloise is a little bit more complex and developed compared to Benedict, but she still has a little bit of an issue with that. But Benedict is, oh my god, this season was atrocious for Benedict. And I love the idea of him being pansexual. I love the fact that he got to explore that side of himself, but it came out of nowhere. It really did. I wish that it had been a little bit more like explored in a more interesting way. And that could just be my bias against the Lady Tilly Arnold character. I personally do not like her. You can't make me like her. I think that she had some good moments this season, but overall did not like her. I'm glad that he chucked her out the window. But I just, like, I felt nothing about Benedict's character besides not, like, really, I actually don't even think I felt anything. Like, I was trying to be like, well, maybe I felt a little bit. No, I didn't. I honestly truly didn't. And I feel like they've done a huge disservice to his character in giving him basically nothing to do all season besides realize that he's pansexual, and in the least interesting way possible. I wish that they had continued on with his artistic side. I thought that that was really interesting, and that gave him a purpose, that gave him some substance. And I thought it was so strange because, like, he has this conversation with Lady Tilly Arnold and her lover at this, like, little intimate dinner party, and it makes it seem like he's not artistic. Like, he doesn't like art, actually. Like, he actually really doesn't. Like, he doesn't have an artistic bone in his body. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, he makes it seem like he has no hobbies. He has nothing to do all day except for, like, lay about and go to parties. And it's like, that's not Benedict's character at all. Like, what are we talking about? Like, who are we trying to, like, represent here? Like, I'm so confused, because the Benedict I remember from season 2 really loved art and was really passionate about it. Even though he didn't get into that school that he wanted, why do we have to abandon that part of his character completely? Because when he was talking to that guy, and the guy's like, you know, he's a lover of the arts, whatever, like, it seemed like, okay, there's, like, maybe a connection there, like, you know, whatever. No, Benedict actually really doesn't like art. He doesn't really care about it, actually. He's never cared about it. Like, it felt like gaslighting. It felt like it was gaslighting me into believing that he had never cared about art in the first place. So confusing. I hate the characterization of Benedict in this season. It was horrible. I do think that he is not a lost cause. I will say that. I think that he still has potential, and stay with me. Stay with me. I know this is going to be a little bit crazy, because I think that a lot of people are very, very dedicated to the Cinderella retelling of Benedict's story. Like, his plotline is obviously very tied to the story of Cinderella with Sophie, etc. This is just a theory of mine. I mean, it's not even really a theory. I wouldn't even say that. Like, it's not even there. It's not even, like, headcanon-y. It's just, like, me having thoughts. And just a reminder, I do not have any sway over the storyline that Benedict is going to have, hopefully, in season 4. I have no say over that. I do not write for the show. Me having thoughts about Benedict's character and plotline does not mean anything at all. Literally, it doesn't. And I know that a lot of people in the Bridgerton fandom love to immediately attack people because they have thoughts. And I'm like, babe, these people have no sway over Bridgerton, over the real plot lines. Don't get mad. Just don't get mad. It's really not that big of a deal. However, I think that if I were a writer on Bridgerton, I love Shakespeare, okay? Let's just say that. I love Shakespeare. One of my favorite plays is Much Ado About Nothing. In the play Much Ado About Nothing, one of the main characters' names is Benedict. I don't know why... I'm gonna yell right now. I don't know why Miss Julia Quinn did not make his story a Much Ado About Nothing retelling. Why is it a Cinderella retelling? I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. It's so random. It could have been a Much Ado About Nothing retelling. And me, as a Shakespeare fan, and as a diehard Shakespeare fan a diehard Much Ado About Nothing fan who has read the play multiple times and loves the movie and has seen the movie multiple times, why is he not Benedict? Why? His name is literally Benedict. Why is he not being, like, pushed into the Benedict role? Which I could kind of see that maybe he might be. Only because he is so quippy this season. I mean, he's quippy in all seasons. But this season in particular, he is pretty quippy. And Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing is also quippy. He's very funny, and he likes to battle with words with the wonderful, beautiful Beatrice. What if we take elements of the Cinderella plot that he has already? We have Sophie, great. He has been having, as somebody pointed out, more interactions with the servants in this season, which I think would be really interesting. What if he meets Sophie, especially at the masquerade? Because this also happens in Much Ado About Nothing. There is a sort of like masquerade party-ish sort of thing in Much Ado About Nothing, where Benedict and Beatrice talk to each other and have no idea who the other person is, and kind of have like this like battle of wits together, as they are wont to do. And Beatrice is kind of complaining about Benedict, and Benedict's like, but he's actually kind of a cool guy if you like think about it. If you like really get to know him, he's actually kind of funny. And Beatrice is like, absolutely not. He is not funny. He is not cool. Like, he just thinks he's cool, but he's like really a tryhard, and like I could never be friends with him. Like, it's just never. He's just so annoying. And like Benedict is kind of hurt by this, so he's kind of like, oh, you know, whatever. We could have something similar like that happen. Like, imagine if like Benedict and Sophie meet at this masquerade and they don't know who each other is, but like Sophie is just kind of like there at the party, obviously, you know, looking great, gorgeous, beautiful, with her little mask on, and is kind of getting to live out this fantasy. But also, because she is a servant and because she is not titled or noble or whatever, she is disillusioned with the nobility and the titled ton, and she kind of goes on this rant to Benedict and is like, ugh, everybody here is just like, they don't get it, they're so like not connected with the real world, with real people, etc, 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 not knowing who Benedict is, and just kind of like confiding in him in this like, you know, heat of the moment, whatever. And he is kind of taken with that. Like, what if that happens? And we can kind of have like this twist on like both Cinderella and Much Ado About Nothing. And or even like they can kind of like have that battle of wits. I would love that, to like have her kind of make a quip about like society and whatever, and then Benedict kind of also make a quip, and like them kind of going back and forth. I would love that. I just don't understand why they named him Benedict and we have no mention of Much Ado About Nothing. That's weird. That's weird, right? I needed to get that off my chest because I think that that would be a great idea. Truly, truly, honestly, heart of hearts, it would be a great idea. But also, I'm a Shakespeare fan, so I might be biased. Also, I feel like we should talk about Francesca and Michaela. Personally, I'm really excited about it. But this also could be because I did not really care for When He Was Wicked. It was a perfectly fine book. I didn't really have any strong opinion on it. It just was meh to me. Whatever, like I didn't really connect with Francesca, didn't really care about Michael, didn't really care about anybody in that book. However, the portrayal of Francesca by Hannah Dodd, incredible. Amazing. I think I mentioned this in part 1, but like the way that she's like very autistic coded, I love it. Personally, as an autistic person, love it. Think it's fantastic. Really, really, truly relate to show Francesca. And now that Michael has been gender bent into Michaela, and that is canon, it's canon, I just am so happy. I'm so happy. I could not be happier. I could not be more excited to see their plot play out. Before, if it had just been a Michael, I would have been like, well, whatever. I really like Franny. I'll be excited about that season. It's fine, like whatever. But now that it's Michaela, my excitement went from about here. I mean, initially it was about down here. Once I started to really like Francesca, it got up to here. Now that we have a Michaela, we're like all the way up here, like outside of the frame. We are so, I don't know if you could see it, the bisexual flag over there. Yeah, we're excited in this household. At least I am. I'm excited. So yeah, we love Michaela in this household. We love Masali, who's the actress who plays Michaela. We are not going to be homophobic in this household. And if you really loved Michael, I can understand feeling a little bit disappointed, and that's totally valid. That's totally fine. But the thing that we're not going to do is be homophobic. I think that's everything I have to say on that topic. I love it. I'm excited. I'm really pumped to see how it's gonna work out, how it's gonna go. I love that Julia Quinn gave her blessing. Not that anybody really needed it, but I think that a lot of the antis were kind of being like, well, Julia Quinn wouldn't want this. And Julia Quinn was kind of like, literally gave my blessing. So actually it's fine, which I love. I love that. But yeah, love Hannah Dodd, love Francesca and Michaela, love John, love them all. They're great. It's gonna be a really interesting season once we get there. At this rate, I think we won't get there until like 2032 or something like that, but we'll get there at some point. As always, we love Hyacinth and Gregory. I love how excited Hyacinth was about the engagement. I thought that was so sweet, so adorable. And we also love Gregory. Obviously, we love Gregory. It still blows my mind how much they have grown since season 1. They were just literal babies in season 1, and now they're like nearly adults. It's adorable. We love Kate and Anthony in this season. I love the fact that like they are the ones that kind of helped Colin work through some of his feelings about Lady Whistledown. Like, even though they didn't know what he was talking about or what he was going through, they did still help him, and that was really sweet. I love that scene. I almost wish it had been a little bit longer. That's kind of another thing of like, so much of this season, so much of this whole show feels very rushed and very strange. I, of course, really do love the different plot structures and the different pacing from season to season. I think that I think it keeps the show fresh and different. However, we still need more episodes each season, like we really do. And I think that having only 8 episodes per season hinders the storytelling abilities of the writers, the actors, everything. But yeah, love Anthony and Kate. They're the best. They're so wonderful, and I love getting to see them in marital bliss. It is just so sweet, and I really hope that we get to see more of them throughout the show. It seems like both of the actors are really excited to be in other seasons of this show, which is a blessing for any of the actors to like actually like care about this show. It makes me happy. I would love to see more of them. I would. I think that they're fantastic and one of my favorite ships from the show and from the books actually too. I will say I loved the song selection in part 2, specifically of Yellow by Coldplay during the wedding. That was beautiful. That was incredible. It made me cry. I've loved that song since I was like a kid. I've always really loved that song. It's always really held a special place in my heart. So it was really, really cute to see it like incorporated into a story that I love so much. And then also You Belong With Me during their first dance as a married couple brought me to sobs. Like, I was actually like genuinely like hunched over, like hyperventilating, crying. It's so embarrassing to say, but I was. It really got me in my heart. It really did. It was beautiful. And You Belong With Me is actually one of the songs that is on my Pollen playlist. One of my favorite playlists. I listen to it all the time. But yeah, You Belong With Me was one of the songs on that playlist that I've had for like ever. And I'm so glad that it was used for Colin and Penelope, because it really is so them. It really truly is. And I just thought that a lot of the song selection was so perfect, so well done, and I love their dance in that scene. Oh, it's amazing, it's iconic. And then it gets like interrupted by the queen and being like, I know one of you is Lady Whistledown, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's so intense and crazy. I guess I do kind of have to talk about the Lady Whistledown plot. I am very conflicted, because part of me does like the way that it was handled, and then another part of me is kind of like, not my favorite. You know what I mean? Like, I'm such of two minds. I think there were moments that I really loved about it, and then there were moments I didn't love about it. But I also feel like the Lady Whistledown plot was a little messy, and that can be fun, and I think it was a lot of fun. It was, you know, I think that what makes it so fun is Queen Charlotte. She just clearly has so much fun with it, and I love that. But it just tonally felt so weird every time. And I almost wish, I think the thing that I wish that they hadn't kept from the books is Cressida trying to put herself into the ring as Lady Whistledown. Or at least I wish that they had gone about it in a different way. Like, I just didn't love the way that that specific part of the plot was executed. I feel like it could have been changed. I don't know how I would have changed it personally. I think I would have to really ruminate on that. But I just didn't love it. And I don't know if it's because I don't like Cressida as a character, or if it's just because I didn't like the plot. What I did end up liking about it is the way that it's resolved, which I think that I have kind of an unpopular opinion with that. I know a lot of people wanted there to be more of an intense reaction and like retribution for Penelope being Lady Whistledown. Like, people wanted her to suffer like real consequences, and I just have to remind everybody that this is a historical romance fantasy. Like, this isn't real. Like, we're dealing with romance ideas here, like and romance sensibilities and expectations of the genre. She was never going to experience like real world consequences. That just wasn't gonna happen. I'm really sorry if you had the expectations that she was gonna face real consequences. That's just not what happens in romances. Her consequences come from her interpersonal relationships and the way that the people who care about her react to it. The fact that she got her lashings from Colin and Eloise specifically, that was her consequence. Her consequence was her romance possibly not working out and her friendship possibly being lost forever. Those were her consequences. Her inner turmoil was her consequence. She was never going to be held accountable by Queen Charlotte. That just wasn't going to happen. I'm so sorry. I did really like that. I think that that was really good, that she had to come clean to everybody and fully own the fact that she was Lady Whistledown in order to get her happily ever after. Like, that was integral to her earning her happily ever after, which I really liked. I feel like I do a lot of talking on Twitter specifically, so it's kind of hard to like come up with other things that I want to mention or like address, because I think I do a lot of that on Twitter anyway. So if you want to, you know, hear more of my thoughts about Bridgerton or whatever, I talk about it a lot on Twitter all the time. But yeah, I feel like that's everything. I think overall I really did enjoy this season. It might be my favorite season thus far. I think not only because I love Colin so much, I really do. They're one of my favorites. I mean, I love Anthony as well, but Colin really just holds such a special place in my heart. And I also think that this season overall did the best with what it was given compared to other seasons. But I think that this is the kind of show that gets better with each season. I think that, you know, even though there are still a lot of things to work on, I think that they do a pretty good job at trying their best to rectify issues from past seasons. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that we'll get a truly really great season until like maybe like Eloise or Francesca, only because there are still so many things to get right. But I think that, you know, with a lot of things, especially with a show that, like, I think when they first made Bridgerton, I don't think that they could have imagined that it was going to be this popular and that so many people were going to tune in. And so I think that with each progressive season, they're just going to get better and better. So that's all I can hope for. I wish the creators and the showrunners and the writers and the actors nothing but the best. I think that they did a really great job with what they were given. Nothing is perfect, not even this season. It's not perfect. There are plenty of things to critique about it. However, I had a great time personally. I had a lot of fun. And I also had a lot of fun talking about this season, so I hope you guys enjoyed this entire discussion on part 2 of season 3. I had a great time, and I hope that we can continue the discussion in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts about part 2 specifically, or also just like the entirety of season 3. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are down below, and I will see you all in my next video that will most definitely not be about Bridgerton. Bye!